Of our names once this race is starting to reach its end. However, lane 5 and lane 4 are our front runners for our first swim of the evening. Looks like lane number 5 representing Conard, lane number 4 representing South Windsor. And they're both neck and neck here, lanes 4 and 5. Clearly the top performers here for this relay race. And already they're down to their second half, 100 yards in. And they're still not letting up. Both lanes 4 and 5 are both still trying to vie for who can end up first here. Let's see as they continue to wrap this up with the last relay here for the freestyle. They're both charging ahead. Who will make it? It's down to the last 25 yards as final lap. Lane 5 pulling ahead. Conard ever so slightly, but lane 4 is not willing to let this go. Who is going to finish first? Will it be Conard or will it be South Windsor? And it looks like Conard, lane number 5, will be finishing first with a 1:46.60. Lane 4 finishing with a 1:46.81, a 21 millisecond difference. Incredible, incredible. All right. And while this race is going on, let me list off the names from lane 2 representing South Windsor. Greg Katz, Ian Park, Monish Strivatsov, Tyler McLaughlin. Lane 3, Conard, Jack Rich, Lucas Stedman, Bruce Jones, Jeremy Hunt. Lane 4, South Windsor, Ryan Nguyen, Aaron Park, Brian Garvey, and Quinn Yanaway. Lane 5, Conard, Nathan Loney, Nicholas Hall, Luke Scheinfeld, and Andrew Filoto. Lane 6, South Windsor, Samir Gupta, Rishi Murali, Madhu Hayton Lena, and Aditya Patel. And lane number 8, South Windsor, Paul O'Neill, Shreyanash Banerjee, Aditya Shantaram, and Richard Lowe. All right, and that wraps up the men's 200-yard medley relay for lane number for next heat. We have the men's 200-yard freestyle from lanes 1 through 8. We have Matthew Robinson from Conard, Fateh Singh from South Windsor, Matthew Kroll from Conard, Brian Garvey from South Windsor, Andrew Fan from Conard, Jordan Cosman from South Windsor, Ethan Hunt from Conard, and Alex Fetzko from South Windsor. Off to the races immediately. This is a total of 4 laps around the pool. Looks like lane number 5 will be pulling ahead over amongst the rest of the pack. Lanes 3 and 4 are next, closest behind. 7 also not too far behind, all about a swimmer's length away from lane 5, as lane 5 is already finishing up the 50-yard mark. Lane 5's Andrew Fan, representing Conard, is front-running this pack quite well and is trying to maintain this momentum. Lanes 3 and 4 are not willing to let this go. Lane 7 falling behind ever so slightly, but lanes 3 and 4 having the tenacity to not give up, even though they are a full swimmer's length away. Lane 5 now continuing into the second half of the race now that 2 laps are done, reaching the 100-yard mark. Lanes 3 and 4 also reaching it not too far behind. And lane 4 starting to lose some steam. That one swimmer's length is now into 1.5. Lane 3 also still maintaining the same distance. So lane 5 continues to push on ahead and continuing this momentum, as Andrew Fan of lane 5 Conard continues to pull ahead for the last lap, the last 50 yards. Matthew Kroll, lane 3, and Brian Garvey, lane 4. Not too keen on letting this go. Will they have a last spurt here in order to close the distance? Or will Andrew Fan of Conard continue to just run away with the competition, as Andrew is now starting that last burst over there of speed, and is making this a nice, decisive first place at a 1:56.86. Lane 3 finishing 1:58.34, and lane 4 finishing with a 2:00.24. All right, and as we start to wrap up this race, we'll be moving on to the next heat, the men's 200-yard individual medley. From lanes 2 through 7, we have Sean Norcott from South Windsor, Luke Scheinfeld from Conard, Ryan Nguyen from South Windsor, Nicholas Hall from Conard, Andrew Truong from South Windsor, and Zachary Gosley from Conard. Now, the individual medley is all about maintaining good speed on all 4 swimming forms, as each one will have to be done throughout the entire lap around the pool. And our swimmers are off already. We're making this a quick evening, folks, quick evening. And from the looks of it, looks like lane 3 will be pulling ahead. Starting off strong with a butterfly, but lanes 4 and 5 are pretty neck and neck. It's all about this first turnover to see who gets the strongest momentum from the start, but it looks like lanes 3, 4, and 5 are all vying for first place here. Let's see how well they continue on as they move on to the next swim style, that being which the backstroke. And from the looks of it, looks like lane 5 is pulling ahead ever so slightly amongst the other lanes, lanes 4 and 3. Nicholas Hall ever so slightly ahead amongst the rest of the pack representing Conard. And now that pack has now widened a little bit, as now lane 5 is now moved on from being neck and neck to now being about a full swimmer's length away. They have now reached the halfway mark, and it's thus ending the backstroke. Now moving on to the breaststroke, as lane 5 continues to continue this momentum. Lanes 3 and 4 have now fallen behind about a full swimmer's length away. Now moving up to 2 for lane 3. So lane 5 continues this push, and it's just widening this gap further and further. All right, and it looks like lane 5 has now reached the final 50 yards of this race, and now moving on to the freestyle. Lane 4 now reaching to the freestyle as well, and lane 3 is now, and from once was about 2 swimmers length away, is now moved on already to being about half a pool's distance away. As lane 5's Nicholas Hall is just trudging along and moving to end this race with a swift victory, and finishing first place with a 2:09.99. Lane 4 poised to take second, and finishing with a 2:17.02. Lane 3 now finishing third with a 2:23.14. All right, and as we start to begin to wrap up this race, we'll be moving on to the next heat. This next heat will be the men's 50-yard freestyle. That's just one lap around the pool. We have 2 total heats for this. For the first heats from lanes 2 through 8, we have Aaron Park from South Windsor, Alexander Petit from Conard, Quinn Yanaway from South Windsor, Andrew Filoto from Conard, Tyler McLaughlin from South Windsor, Lucas Stedman from Conard, and Koshnaf Mohammed from South Windsor. Now this one will be a quick race, folks. This is a full-on sprint in the water. This is a 1 lap, 1 time go around. As our swimmers start to get ready. Third time's the charm as they all get ready to dive off, and immediately looks like lane 2 has the strongest start. Lane 5 trudging on ahead, but this is a quick race. It's all about the turnover. Who gets the cleanest turnover? Looks like lane 5 is going to be coming out first on top. However, that's all neck and neck. Lanes 5, 6, 3 are all next closest, but lane 5 trudging ahead, and lane 5 will be finishing first with a 23.82. Lanes 2, 3, and 4 finishing 2, 3, and 4 respectively with a 24.34, 24.44, and 24.78. Wow. incredibly fast race. But that wraps up the first heat of the men's 50-yard freestyle. Up the next, we have this second heat from lanes 2, 4, 6, and 8, all representing South Windsor. We have Richard Lowe, Aditya Patel, Shreyansh Banerjee, and Paul O'Neill. As the swimmers get ready. And they're off. All right, and from the start of it, looks like lane 2 has the strongest start to it thus far. However, lane 4 just has a faster pace overall. Let's see how well they do in this turnover. And while lane 4 seemed to have struggled with the turnover ever so slightly compared to lane 2, lane 4 just has a faster pace overall. However, it's quite neck and neck. Which one will finish first, 4 or 2? And looks like 4 finishes over lane 2 by just 1 millisecond from 32.29 and 32.30. Insanely fast. All right, and that wraps up the men's 50-yard freestyle. We'll be moving on to the next segment, and the next segment being the diving segment of tonight's swim meet. And as we prepare for the diving segment, we will now go through, I believe, a 10 to 15 minute intermission. So, now's a good time to go to the bathroom, grab a snack, and do whatever you need to do. But with that, thank you for tuning in to WHCI. I'd like to remind everyone watching thus far to subscribe to WHCI for more content on West Hartford. We cover from community events to sports events on the daily.
I'm just going to keep it on there.
Yep. Normally we just keep it on. So.
How much other replay feature?
Sure. Yeah, try to figure that out. At some point I need to actually go sit down and actually play with a YOLO. Until then.
These YOLOs are really nice. I don't know if they're generic.
I think that one's a new one because all the other ones have cracks in them. So.
Okay, that one's cool. One of the YOLOs I remember had it was slightly bloated in the back. It's kind of a little bit worrying.
Only a little bit.
Why you decided to do computer science?
Well, back when I was in high school, I actually really enjoyed programming and stuff. My initial goal was to become a game developer because I wanted a creative outlet, and I like programming, I like games, so why not, right? Eventually mellowed out and went to go specific into software engineering. The main reason was I was good at programming. Was one of the better coders of the class. I knew what I was doing with what I was taught, yeah, I was overall just I thought programming was fun. Switched to college now, however, and I realized it's a pretty isolating degree, right? And especially now with ChatGPT and stuff, right? It feels a lot less rewarding to me personally. Rewarding.
Oh yeah.
And a lot less enjoyable just doing it because one, there's already so many resources out there for you to just copy and paste code, and now that ChatGPT exists, you can literally just ask, hey, can you write me can you code how to do this, right? And I'm like, okay, well, that takes out half the fun of it. And the other half being, I just really don't like the people that I'm over there with. They're all, most of them are just weird, or they just aren't emotive at all, right?
Oh, hello? Oh, okay. Thank you. Alright.
Yeah, they can definitely hear all of us. Right? Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah.
What was that? Yeah. Oh.
All right, and now we're starting the diving segment. We have 3 total divers for tonight's segment. We have 2 Conard divers and 1 South Windsor diver. We have Henry Jolet from Conard, Emma Trubini from South Windsor, and James Occhiello from Conard. 3, 4.5, and 4. All right, and the first diver was Emma, the other diver being Henry now. Looks like our rotation is Emma, Henry, and James. Three and a half, and 3 for Henry. Up next, James. Seven, 5.5, and 5.5. All right, and was it go back to Emma, representing South Windsor. All right, and it's 2 bingo for Emma. 2, 2, 2 across the board. Four and a half, 4, and 3.5. Looks like he hesitated there for a bit. Diving is a very tense segment of the swim meet. So everyone has all eyes on you. And the swimming pool is deathly quiet. In addition to that, that was also quite close to the diving board. So very nerve-wracking indeed. 5, 4.5, and 5. 4.5, 4, and 3.5. Four, 3.5, and 3.5. Six and a half, 5.5, and 6. Four and a half, 5, and 4.5. Four, 4.5, and 3.5. Five and a half, 4.5, and 4.5. Four and a half, 5, and 4.5. 4.5, 4.5, and 4. Oh my goodness. 6.5, 4.5, and 5.5. Every parent in the crowd holding their breath there. Oh my goodness. From our perspective there, it looks like he was going to go face first into the diving board, but thank goodness, worked out in the end. Five and a half, 5 and 5. Four and a half, and 4 once again. Not only was his head inches away, that was quite the belly flop. 2, 3, and 2.5. All right, and with that, that wraps up the diving segment of tonight's meet. We're now transitioning back to the swimming segment of Conard at South Windsor. And will now feature a brief, I think, 30-minute intermission, though I believe it could be 10 to 15. But yes, we will now transition to the swimming segments. Tune back for more.
I've muted it, but we have get rid of it.
All right, and we're turning back into the swimming segment. We're now starting the men's 100-yard butterfly as our swimmers getting ready. And they're off. All right, and this is the 100-yard butterfly. So this is only 2 laps around the pool. Sorry for the abrupt beginning to this. And already looks like lanes 5 and 4 are pioneers for this race, as both lanes 5 and 4 are pretty much neck and neck. Lane 3 not too far behind, and already we're reaching the second half of this race. Lane 5 representing Conard, lane 4 representing South Windsor. South Windsor is taking the lead in lane 4 over here ever so slightly. It's all in this turnover in the final 25 yards. Lane 4 is still ahead. Lane 5 not willing to let this go, though. It's going to be a close finish here. Will it be lane 5 Conard, lane 4 South Windsor? Looks like lane 4 South Windsor is finishing first with a 57.05. Lane 5 finishing second with a 57.24. All right, and that wraps up the men's 100-yard butterfly. I forgot to mention the names. Lanes 2 through 7, we have Monish Srivatsov, Andrew Fawn from Conard, Brian Garvey from South Windsor, Andrew Filoto from Conard, Fateh Singh from South Windsor, and Bruce Jones from Conard from lanes 2 through 7. And that wraps up the men's 100-yard butterfly. Moving on, we have the men's 100-yard freestyle. We have 2 heats for this. For the first heat from lanes 1 through 8, we have Jack Rich from Conard, Greg Kratz from South Windsor, Luke Scheinfeld from Conard, Quinn Yanaway from South Windsor, Nathan Loney from Conard, Tyler McLaughlin from South Windsor, Alexander Petit from Conard, and Koshnov Mohammed from South Windsor. And our swimmers are off. Once again, this is the 100-yard freestyle, so that's 2 laps around the pool. And immediately, everyone is just rushing to the win over here. Lane 2 is pulling ahead amongst the rest of the pack. Let's see how well they do on this turnover. It looks like they seem to struggle with it. It looks like lane 5 has now pulled the lead here. But everyone is neck and neck here. Lane 5 ever so slightly ahead, but lanes 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7 are all neck and neck as they all approach the second half of this race already. And lane 5, while they are pulling ahead, lane 2 and lanes 2, 3 are next close behind. In fact, there are neck and neck. Lane 5, 2, and 3 all simultaneously reaching that turnover. But lane 5 had the fastest turnover, as lane 5 will be pushing ahead ever so slightly. But lane 3 is not willing to let go. And lane 5, will they finish first? They do. They finish with a 52.98. Lanes 3, 2, and 4 finishing second, third, and fourth, respectively, with a 53.40, 53.90, and 54.92. A very action-packed race there. And with that, we'll be moving on to the second heat of the men's 100-yard freestyle. The next freestyle from lanes 2, 4, 6, and 8, all representing South Windsor. We have Alex Fetsko, Madhu Hayton Lena, Aditya Patel, and Rishi Murali. And they're off. Looks like we have an extra swimmer on lane 5 representing Conard. But lanes 4 and 2 are pulling ahead from the rest of the pack here. As lane 4 continues to have a little bit of a faster pace over lane 2 overall as they take the lead ever so slightly. Already they're moving on to the second half of this race. And lane 4s and 2 are pretty neck and neck. Lane 5 and lane 6 next behind. About 2 swimmers length away from the front runners as they already approach the last leg of the race, the final 25 yards. And lane 4, having a stronger pace overall, has gained quite the momentum here. And will be finishing first over second lane with a 103.34. Second lane finishing with a 104.47. Lane 5 finishing with a 106.87 in third. All right, and as we begin to wrap up this race, we'll be moving on to the next set of heats. This one heat of the men's 500-yard freestyle. Now that's 10 laps around the pool. This swim is all about endurance and maintaining a good pace overall for the whole 100 lap, or sorry, not 100 laps, 10 laps around the pool. From lanes 1 through 7, we have Matthew Robinson from Conard, Jordan Coastman from South Windsor, Ethan Hunt from Conard, Sean Norcott from South Windsor, Matthew Kroll from Conard, Andrew Truong from South Windsor, and Jeremy Hunt from Conard. Now this race is all about pacing yourself and making sure you maintain a good, steady pace throughout all 10 laps, all 500 yards. So while some people may not have the strongest starts, if they can maintain a strong pace throughout the entire 500 yards, they'll be in good shape as lane 5 will be pulling ahead thus far. Lane 5 pulling ahead over lanes 3 and 4. Next runner-ups about a swimmer's length away. Lane 6, 7, and 3. All catching up behind as well as lane 5 has now reached the first lap, the first 50 yards. And from the start of it, looks like lanes 5, 3, and 4 will be our front runners. Lanes 4 and 3 are not keen on letting 5 completely get away with it. The lane 5's now moving on to about being a full swimmer's length away over the next runner-up. And already they're done with the 100-yard mark. 2 out of 10 laps are now complete. As lane 5 is now starting to peter out a little bit as lanes 3 and 4 are now catching up, at least lane 3 specifically. And lanes 5, 3, and 4 are now reaching the third lap mark. Lanes 3, 6, and 7, or rather lanes 2, 6, and 7 still on lap number 3, or now approaching lap 3. As lanes 5, 3, and 4 still continuing charging along lane 5. Now increasing the gap between the 2 other front runners. As lane 5 now transitions to lap number 4. Lanes 3 and 4 also now on lap 4 as well. We'll be soon reaching the 200-yard mark. And while lane 5 has garnered quite the lead here, lanes 3 and 4 are still neck and neck with each other. As lane 5 is now transitioned to the next 50 yards as well. Into what I believe now is the 5th lap. Lanes 3 and 4 now on 5th lap as well. Poised on to taking the second half of the 5th lap. And with that, lanes 5, 4, and 3 will be reaching the halfway mark. Lanes 6, 7, and 2 now on their 5th lap. And lanes 5, 4, and 3 now on their 6th lap and have reached the halfway mark. And from the start of it, while they all had quite some energy to burn in the beginning. They have now mellowed out and have now come back to a simple pace. And lane 5 is still continuing to have quite a bit of lead here, now about a quarter length of the pool ahead. It's about 3 swimmers length away amongst the other 2. Lane 4 and lane 3 still neck and neck. Lane 4 over lane 3 as of right now as they approach lap number 7. Or they are now on lap number 7. If I've been counting correctly, of course. And lane 5, Matthew Kroll, just continuing to just widen this gap from a quarter length of the pool to now about a full pool's length. As they now have finished lap 7. Moving on to lap number 8. All right, and if you hear the bell, that means the first racer has now approached the final lap they need. And I guess I miscounted. It looks like lane number 5 is already on their final lap of the evening. Lanes 3 and 4 now also approaching the final lap. Looks like I miscounted. And lane 5 now already on the 450-yard mark. The final 25 yards is now in lap 5. Lane 5 is a lap. Lanes 3 and 4 still neck and neck. It's now a competition between the lanes 3 and 4. Lane 4 pulling ahead over lane 3, but lane 5 already going to finish first with a 5:29.53. Solid pace overall. Lane 4 having a last final burst towards the end as lane 4 will be finishing second with a 5:37.16. Lane 3 finishing with a 5:38.77. It's hard to keep track on whose lap is on what, or whose lane is on what lap. But excellent job from lanes 5, 3, and 4. I believe lane 2 will be finishing up, and lane 6 and 7 are also finishing up as well. And as we wrap up the men's 500-yard freestyle, we'll be moving on to the men's 200-yard freestyle relay. We have one heat for this. From representing lane 2 from South Windsor, we have Koshnaf Mohammed, Dylan Baumgartner, Jordan Kosman, and Andrew Truong. Lane 3, Conard, we have James Osciello, Alexander Petit, Ethan Hunt, and Matthew Kroll. Lane 4, South Windsor, we have Quinn Yanaway, Aaron Park, Sean Norcott, and Fateh Singh. Lane 5, we have Conard, Nicholas Hall, Luke Scheinfeld, Andrew Fawn, and Andrew Filoto. Lane 6 for South Windsor, we have Alex Fetzko, Ian Park, Madhu Hayden Lena, Aditya Shantaram. Lane 7 from Conard, we have Bruce Jones, Henry Drolet, Matthew Robinson, and Jeremy Hunt. Lane 8, South Windsor, we have Paul O'Neill, Richard Lowe, Rishi Murali, and Shreyansh Banerjee. For the start of it, looks like lane 5 will be pulling ahead over the rest of the pack. Let's see if they can continue this momentum as they already move on to the second race, or the second racer of the relay race. And explosive starts from every lane. You can see by how ferocious their splashes are as lane 5 continues to maintain this lead. Lane 4 clearly not willing to let this go with such intensity of their splashes, and already they caught back up. Lanes 5 and 4 are somewhat neck and neck. Lane 3 also not keen on letting this go. Third racer for lane 5 coming off with explosive velocity. Lane 4 starting to peter out a little bit as lane 3 is now catching up to lane 4. And lane 5 continuing to keep this momentum. Will their final racer be able to edge it out as lane 4 and 3 both simultaneously now entered their final racer? Lane 5 just absolutely not willing to let this lead go and will maintain trying to finish this race with such decisiveness as lanes 4 and 3 are neck and neck. Lane 4 over lane 3. Lane 5 will be finishing first with a 1:36.38. Lane 4 poised to take second, but it's neck and neck, hard to tell. Lane 3 taking it over lane 4 at the 1:42.21. Lane 3 finishing with a 1:42.33, a 12 millisecond difference. A very intense and ferocious race right there. All right. And with that, we'll be soon wrapping up the men's 200-yard freestyle relay. Up next, we have the men's 100-yard backstroke. We have one heat for this. From lanes 2 through 7, we have Greg Kratz from South Windsor, Lucas Stedman from Conard, Ryan McEwen from South Windsor, Nathan Loney from Conard, Samir Gupta from South Windsor, and Jack Rich from Conard. All right, and our swimmers are getting ready for the 100-yard backstroke. 2 laps around the pool. And they're off. All right, and from the start of it, looks like lanes 4 and 5 will be pulling ahead amongst the rest of the pack, but it's all in this turnover. With a big splash over, looks like lane 5 pulling ahead over lane 4 ever so slightly, as our 2 main front runners, lanes 2, 3, 7, and 8, all trying to catch up to these 2 as they already reached the second half of this race. Lanes 5 and 4 still neck and neck. Lane 5 somewhat slow in the turnover there, as lane 4 is now ever so slightly ahead. It's hard to tell with this angle. I think lane 4 is ahead. It's all down to this turnover and their final spurt for this last part. Lane 4 is now ahead of lane 5, but lane 5 not keen on letting it go, as lane 5 has a stronger pace overall. Will lane 5 get it over lane 4? Lane 5 overtakes lane 4, and lane 5 finishing first with a 1:00.53. Lane 4 finishing with a 1:00.76. A very close race there between lanes 5 and 4. 23 millisecond difference. And with that, that will be wrapping up the men's 100-yard backstroke. We'll be moving on next to the men's 100-yard breaststroke. We have a total of 5 racers for this category. From lanes 2 through 6, we have Monish Srivatsov from South Windsor, Zachary Gosley from Conard, Aaron Park from South Windsor, Nicholas Hall from Conard, and Ian Park from South Windsor. Once again, 2 laps around the pool as each swimmer is psyching themselves up. And they're off. And from the start of it, looks like lane 4 has the fastest lead thus far, but we'll see from the first turnover. Lanes 3 and 4 pretty neck and neck. Lane 5 as well. Let's see who has the cleanest turnover. Looks like lane 5 coming out first, but lane 4 neck and neck. It's hard to tell who's in the lead here. I believe lane 5, but lane 4 could be ever so slightly in front. Lane 3 not too far behind as well as they continue on to the second half of this race. And it looks like they're just neck and neck, lane 5 and 4. I believe lane 4 is ever so slightly ahead, but it could be lane 5. I think lane 5 is in the lead here. Yeah, lane 5, the lead now with a more definitive lead here is already they're moving on to the final leg of this race. Lane 4 still not trying to let this go, but it's just not enough as lane 5 will finish first with a 107.53. Lane 4 finishing with a 108.03. Or lane 4 finishing second with a 108.03. A very close race there. Excellent job to all lanes. And with that, that'll be wrapping up the men's 100-yard breaststroke, and we'll be moving on to the final heat of the night, the final race. This will be the men's 400-yard freestyle relay. Representing lane 2 in South Windsor, it's Fateh Singh, Jordan Kosman, Monish Srivatsov, and Sean Norcott. Lane 3, Conard, we have Ethan Hunt, Jeremy Hunt, Jack Rich, and Zachary Gossley. Lane 4, South Windsor, Brian Garvey, Tyler McLaughlin, Greg Kratz, and Ryan Nguyen. Lane 5, Conard, Alexander Petit, Andrew Fawn, Matthew Kroll, and Nathan Loney. In lane 6, South Windsor, we have Alex Fetsko, Aditya Patel, Aditya Shantaram, and Samir Gupta. And with that explosive start from lane 4, 5, and 3, looks like lanes 4 and 5 will be our front runners for this. However, it's the 400-yard freestyle relay, so that means each swimmer will be doing 2 laps around the pool before they pass it off to their teammate. Lane 4 now catching the lead over the rest here as lane 5 petered out towards the end, or towards the second half of this first segment, and is now on par with lanes 2 and 3. Lane 4 still trudging on ahead. Let's see if their next swimmer can maintain this momentum. As lane 4 now moved on to their second racer. Lane 5 moving in as well. Lanes 2 and 3 prepping as well. And lane 4, second racer, they're just moving along, not trying to let this go. As lane 4 continues to have strong momentum here. Lane 5 is trying to make up for the deficit that was created in lane for the first 100 yards by the first relay racer. As lane 4 is now moving into the second half of their 100 yards. Lane 5 now as well. And lane 4 is just continuing to maintain momentum. Lane 5, while they're trying to close the gap, looks like they're starting to peter out in second half. Although lane 4 is also starting to peter out as well. What once was a full swimmer's length away, or 2 swimmers length away, has now been moved down to 1 swimmer's length. Lane 4 now moving on to the second half of the race. Lane 5 as well. Their third relay racer is now poised to just not letting their victory slip out of their grasp, as they're now widening this gap from 1 swimmer's length to now 2 to maybe perhaps even 3, but lane 5 not keen on letting it go and is trying to charge back along. Lane 4 now reaching the second half of their relay race. Lane 5 as well. Laps 1 of 2 done for their third relay racer. And lane 4 just continuing to just trudge along here. Lane 5 moving on to the final 25 yards for they need before they move on to the next relay racer. And it's all down to the final relay racer. Lane 4 now only 100 yards left. Lane 5 only 100 yards left. Will lane 4 continue to maintain this lead, or will lane 5 catch back up? Lane 5 is clearly not letting this victory go without a challenge, as lane 5 very keenly, explosively trying to finish this race. But lane 4 still has that gap, that 2 swimmers length gap they have as a buffer they need. Lane 5 clearly not trying to let victory go without a challenge, but This gap is just too much. As lane 4 now poised to take the end here. And lane 4 looking like they will be finishing first with a 3:34.36. Lane 5 finishing second with a 3:46.95. Excellent performance there. Both teams of both lanes having a strong performance throughout all 4 racers. Lane 2 now looking to finish third with a 4:05.24. And lane 6 and 3 wrapping up soon as well. As lane 6 has one more lap to go. The final 50 yards of the night. Lane 6 soon to be wrapping up the 400-yard freestyle relay. And finishes. All right, and that wraps up all the heats that we have for tonight's boys swim meeting at Conard at South Windsor. Thank you for tuning in to WHCI. Once again, I'd like to remind everyone that WHCI will continue to showcase more of the town's sports and events alike. So be sure to subscribe to not miss any of them. I'm Sunny D, signing off for tonight's swim meet.